somebody's going to hear it and say, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. That's what the goal is. And right now, more and more women are younger getting diagnosed. And, some have families, some don't. And if you don't have that support system, man, that sucks. It really does. Extremely powerful stories. Yeah. What some people have been through. I mean, I had it pretty bad, but I didn't have it half as bad as some of the gals I've talked to. So, I mean, I'm still standing upright. That's all that matters at this point.
So Justine Finocchiaro-Doles, host of Just Talk with Justine, thank you for joining me on Podcast Junkies.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So we connected at a indoor farming conference of all things.
We did in Las Vegas. Yeah, back in February.
Yeah, I
Or
can't
March.
believe
Yeah,
it's been that much time has passed already, but
already.
yeah. So regular listeners to the show will know that I have this first show, Podcast Junkies, which I launched in 2014. And the interest was in just connecting with podcasters because I was entering the space. And I thought the best way to do that was to interview other podcasters.
That is so cool. I love that idea. I really do.
And then I started in 2020 Vertical Farming Podcast, which brought me into the world of indoor farming. And then I started connecting and meeting the conference organizers, and we met Suzanne, who was the coordinator at Indoor AgCon.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I started attending those conferences because I wanted to learn more about that world. And it's just been crazy whirlwind because I interview CEOs and founders on that show specifically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were interviewing right across from me, Microclimates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super nice.
Yeah.
What a nice gal.
She's beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful person.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting, the journey, like all podcasting related. And then talk a little bit about what your role was at Indoor Icon.
Well, I was doing the show for years as a general service contractor. We're the ones that come in, and provide all the tables, chairs, empty the trucks, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't big enough for them because they were growing. We started with them back when they were even in Orlando years ago.
Yeah.
And they just wanted more technology. And so they went and got bigger, and they went with another contractor that is local and that handled a lot more things for them. So they hired me, since I knew all the exhibitors, to be the face, to make sure that all the different exhibitors were happy and got all their products that they need.
How long have you been in that world?
Oh, God, probably 30 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. My husband's been in the business probably 50. Wow. And then when we met, he worked for a company, and then I knew he had so many clients that I said, let's start our own. And we did. But now we're both on the retiring side.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm getting more into my podcast is my goal.
And where's home for you?
I am outside of Orlando in Apopka, Florida.
Okay. Yeah, I've been to Orlando several times. There's a nice podcast conference. I don't know if you've been. Podcast.
I have. I went once. I went last year.
Good. Yeah. Oh, that was the one year we didn't make it, but we've been several times. I know the organizer, Chris Kamitzos.
Yeah.
And his wife, Katie. They're great. And we've met a lot of great folks. Actually, I was there. Yeah. I was there. The one before I missed.
It was at the Marriott, right?
Yeah, at the Marriott. Yeah, that's right. And unfortunately, someone from the podcast community passed away recently, Neil.
Really?
Yeah. He was the DJ at the party, and he's been involved with that organization for a long time. Yeah. And like 2 weeks after the conference, we saw something on Facebook that he had a heart attack, and
I'm sorry.
He was like 48. It was crazy.
Yeah, he's young.
So so it's interesting how kind of living life fully, and it's probably a theme we'll come back to in this conversation.
Exactly.
Well.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So when did you discover the world of podcasting?
It's been about 2 years now, and I don't know. One day, I'm on a breast cancer survivor dragon boat team.
Okay.
And I am the voice kind of for the team. I do a lot of the fundraising because we're a nonprofit and we're always trying to raise money and everything. And I just love talking to survivors. And then one day I just said, I'm going to do it. I didn't even ever listen to a podcast, and then I decided to do it. And I had a local guy help me edit them. And he had a little studio so I could go there, do the podcast with the girls. And it was right across from where I practiced on the lake. So it worked out really good. And then he closed up shop. So then I had a long hiatus of what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And so, but now I'm back and excited. Yeah.
So what was the original premise for, what was the concept for the show when you started it?
Well, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It's all about interviewing survivors and thrivers of breast cancer. And if one person listens and gets help from it and understands that maybe their diagnosis is scary today, but they're talking or hearing about somebody else's journey, maybe they'll, feel a little bit better about what's happening to them because it's a scary journey when you've got diagnosis of breast cancer.
Yeah. So, what was it about that experience that made you wanna realize that it's important to have these conversations? Were you seeing other people doing this, or did you feel like there was a need for this?
I think there's always a need. I'm a four-time cancer survivor, so I know when I was going through all that, I didn't have somebody to chat with, and so now I'm with the camaraderie of my team, and that has really helped me step out of my comfort zone and speak to others about their journeys.
Did you have any inspiration for what the format would be, or were you listening to podcasts or
I
like
just
that?
figured we would talk just like you and I are doing right now, just talk.
Yeah. And how many episodes have you recorded so far?
20 maybe,
Okay.
25, not many. I was trying to do at least 1 or 2 a month. And then like I said, I didn't do it for almost a year, and now I'm just getting back. So I've already done 2 this past month, so
Yeah.
I'm on a roll.
So think about when you started your first one, did you just turn on the mic and started talking about your shared experiences, or did you have some thoughts about, like, maybe this is a couple of questions I wanna ask, or what
Well,
type of research?
I did a little research on YouTube, just like what do you do in a podcast? And I learned that you gotta make it quiet and all the things that go with it, and you gotta have a padded room. And then I realized going to the studio of my friends that what you need. And I don't know, I just kind of I'm a wing. I wing everything. And they don't like to do that because my husband, everybody gets mad like, Justine, you need to focus, you need to format it, and that's just not who I am. I want to just be organic and talk to you.
And
Is that
so
bad?
No, not at all, because it's something like one of my coaches talks about, perfect is the enemy of done, right? Some people wait for the right moment to get something done. And I think that they wait too long, and especially in the podcasting space. There's some famous podcasters who record their first episode and then hold on to it for a year. But it seems like, this your modus operandi has been like just you'll figure it out on the way.
That's me. I'll figure it out. And I discovered this like that other platform that I really liked. I discovered that by accident. And actually, one of the guys at the show was telling me he does a podcast too. And he
Okay.
told me what a couple of ones that he uses. So I just looked them up, figured out how to do it.
Was your attendance at Podfest the first time you ever been around a podcast community?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Talk about that experience. What was that like?
Podfest well, I was invited by, was it Buzzsprout? No, there's a duck logo. I can't recall at the moment.
Yeah.
But they invited me to go, so I didn't have to, and I'm local, so, it was no problem. I've been wanting to go. It was good. It was good. I didn't know where to start. I just kinda introduced myself, gave out some cards, and figured out what most people were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you learned you're able to apply to your show?
Yes and no. Not yes, of course there was, but I can't really pinpoint what that was. But I
And that
enjoy going, and next time I'll go again and really immerse more into the, steps that they do
yeah,
besides, and of course, I'm all about the exhibitor side because that's what I do,
yeah.
when I should have went into more of the sessions, which I did not do.
Yeah, the sessions are really helpful
Of
for
course,
first-time
they are.
podcasters.
Yeah.
So have you noticed anything since you started with the first episode and now you said you're on episode 20? Have you changed how you speak to your guests, how you prepare for your guests, or even, like, the format and the pacing of the
Well, I
interviews?
did start a questionnaire that I do send them, about their journeys, and then I kinda just read off of that. I'll ask the question that they've replied with, and, yeah, I really haven't changed anything. I really need to learn more and to polish my gig. I really need to do if I want to be a success at it.
Sure.
And that's my downfall. I'm in this mess of a room here and I just need to focus.
So, as much as you're willing to share, can you talk a little bit about your experience with cancer and what that journey was like and how you were able to make it through that?
Well, when I was 18, I had just moved to Miami and my mom and I were going to stay in Miami and my brother lived there and we were at my brother's house. And I had this bad cough, and next thing you know, he couldn't take it, and we went to the emergency room, and next thing you know, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease.
Okay.
And they did so much radiation and chemotherapy on me. At the time, I was 18. I'm 66 now, so we're talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, I developed my first breast cancer from all the radiation that they did to me, which they don't do
Mm,
anymore to people.
yeah.
So what they did was pretty, it was barbaric back then, but it saved my life, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you gone through 4 cycles of that?
Well, I first had my Hodgkin's disease at 18. 20
Yeah.
years later, I had my first breast cancer. And then I think it was 5 years later than that, I had another in the other breast. Then it came back.
Mm.
So it's, yeah.
How has that, changed your view about life, when you go through that and you
Oh
meet
my
other
God.
and maybe even through the conversations? Like, talk about your experience, in terms of how you view life now.
Oh, I view life as live life like you're dying.
Mm,
And, if I want to jump out of that airplane, I better do it. And I did it. So, you're going to go one day.
sure.
So it all depends on how you go. So I want to just live like I'm dying, live life like you're dying.
That's interesting, and how has that affected your relationships with your family and friends?
Well, it's mostly my husband, and he's living life like he's dying too. So but he's with me 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, we both experienced, we don't want to be afraid of anything. We just want to feel as best we can and live the adventures. We love to travel
Mhm.
and just live life, man. You got to, because you never know what tomorrow brings. You
Yeah.
really don't.
Very true. And so, are there any other items on your bucket list?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I want to do the Great Wall of China. That's on my list. And we're gonna head out to Albuquerque, hopefully, and do the big balloon fest. I wanna
Oh,
do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are on my list. The Great Wall of China is on my list, and maybe do an Antarctica trip. I don't know. We'll see. Or Africa safari, you
That'd be
know?
fun, for sure.
Yeah, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you research people for this show? Like, what do you look for, or how do you get connected with future guests?
Well, like I said, I'm on a breast cancer survivor dragon boat team. Do you know what a
Yeah.
dragon boat is?
I know what a dragon boat is, yeah. So there's one that
Oh,
it's
yeah,
usually on a lake or on
on a
it's a
lake,
team, yeah.
and my team is not just a few miles down the road, so
It's a rowing team, isn't it? Or
it's paddling. We paddle.
paddling, paddle,
We
okay.
sit 2 women side by
Okay.
side, 20 of us in a boat.
Wow.
Yeah, and we rate. We practice twice a week on the lake, and then we like next week, and we're going to Leesburg, Florida, and there's a big race there. So we'll
Mm,
be competing against other survivors and other sea women teams.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I am surrounded by breast cancer survivors. So I never have a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I haven't done everybody on the team yet. So they're all waiting for me to get them on there. And then you meet people. I really did a really good, I thought, a podcast. And she's a survivor of, she's had a terrible story. Her story is outside of God's umbrella, and she was roofied. And
Wow. What's
while
God's
she,
umbrella?
that's her, she wrote a book, and it's called
Oh,
Outside
I
of
see.
God's
Okay.
Umbrella.
Okay.
And she's an old friend from the convention business. She lives in
Yeah.
Michigan. And I asked her if she wanted, because she's a survivor.
Yeah.
So I died. Oh,
That's
but,
okay. What's your dog's name?
and I just got him about a week and a half ago. His name is
Uh,
Buddy. Yeah,
okay.
he's a love bug. He's a love. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
And
That's what happens with podcasting. I always enjoy it when it happens because then I welcome it because as most podcasters know, like there's no perfect environment and we're not trying to
no,
pretend to be like a radio station here. So I've had
I know.
dogs
And you
jump
look
into
like it. You look so professional with your microphone there and everything. And I'm like, I want to do that. But
yeah.
I want somebody to come in and help me do it. That's what I
Well,
need.
I'll help you with some of that.
Okay, good. That'd
Yeah.
be great. But anyway, that's where I'm at. So I have
So that
enough
you're speaking about your
survivors.
friend that wrote the book under
Oh,
God's
yes,
umbrella.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
sorry, yes, and
Yeah.
she wrote this book. She was roofied, and underneath, while she was out of it, she met this guy at the dog park. While she was out of it, he must have driven her car or something, and they hit somebody, and somebody was killed. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, she woke up, and she went to see her garage, and she saw her car there, but she saw that the window was broken, and poor thing spent
Wow.
9 months in jail, and she had no recollection, but she knew it was her car.
Wow.
Yeah,
What
it's a crazy
story.
story. Yeah, yeah, it's a great story. So, I'm not only sticking with this, but a survivor's a survivor. So
Yeah.
that's what
So
I'm all about.
that's the general theme, anyone who's kinda survived, like, a really harrowing experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What do you notice is, like, the common, like, thread when you speak to these folks, you know, after several conversations, is it about resilience or, what seems to come through as common themes?
How
Mm,
strong we are as people. We're all
mm,
so strong
yeah,
that to overcome stuff like that, you could sit in a corner and curl up and die. Or
yeah,
what's your alternative? But live
yeah,
life like you're dying.
yeah.
That's
Have you ever thought of adjusting the name of the show to speak more to, like, these stories of survival or perseverance or
no, I never did. Well, you think that's something I should consider?
Yeah, you're open to, like, a little bit of coaching right now on the air?
Always. Always. I'm always open to coaching.
So when we think about this, when we work with new clients, one of the things we want to make sure is, as you can see with my show, it's called Podcast Junkies, and the second one is Vertical Farming Podcast. So a lot of the times you want to speak to specifically what a potential listener or viewer is going to get from this podcast. So if you think about stories of survival, that could be with Justine or, how people have persevered through challenging times. It's really just a function of thinking about, like, if you thought about if I had you now go back since you've done 20 already and go listen to those episodes and you think about what the common theme was across all those 20 episodes, what are some like keywords that come to mind?
Strong
Mm,
survivors,
mm,
thrivers. They
yeah.
become a thriver afterwards.
Mm,
If they can get through it, they're thrivers. They're not only survivors, but
yeah.
they're living their best life, I think.
Yeah. So that's if you think about that, that could lend itself well to like the podcast. You could say survivors and thrivers living their best life.
Well, I
Yeah.
do say some of that in my opening a
Yeah.
little bit, but yeah, I like that. Survivors
Yeah.
and thrivers living their best life.
Because now when people see the title, they get a picture of like, oh yeah, I'm a survivor, I'm a thriver, and I'm living my best life. And it's kind of like a little bit of keywords as well, because when you think about, those are one of the fields that are very SEO friendly, like the title of a podcast. So when people are in Apple and people are in Spotify, and inevitably if you make it to YouTube, these are the types of things, survivors podcast or thriving or like, living my best life or something. So
So
these are keywords.
where do you okay, but where do you change that? I mean,
Who do you host with?
Buzzsprout.
Okay, so Buzzsprout, basically what you do is when you log into Buzzsprout, you can change the name of your show. So right now you have Just Talk with Justine. You would replace that with Survivors and Thrivers living your best life. And that
Okay,
could
because
that
I
that
do put that in like a little there is like a little,
the tagline.
yes.
But I don't think
That's
that
not
field
enough?
is it's not field is not visible to if you what you want to think about this strategically in terms of like how it's visible to like SEO search engines, or when people are typing in a name in Apple or Spotify, they're going to look to the name of the show first, right? So they're
Y
going to look for if someone's putting in survivors or thrivers, like if your show is called Survivors and Thrivers, you type that in, then your show would immediately pop up there. So that would be the first recommendation to kind of think about that as well. And then the other thing to think about is when you name your episodes. Currently, are you writing show notes or are you doing summaries for your show? What are you doing now?
and that's
So
why I need you
yeah,
to
yeah,
help me.
yeah,
But my question is, so back to that name thing. I like
yeah.
that idea. But do I change that per episode or do I keep
No,
that
that's the name of the show. Yeah, that's the name of the
that
show.
becomes the name of the
Yeah,
show? So
yeah.
Just
So
Talk with Justine kind of becomes obsolete.
yeah, because what happens
Can I
is you
use
can
that as
put
a
in the
tagline? No.
No, because, typically what you would have is Justine Finocchiaro-Doles as the host of the show. So it'll show up in Apple and Spotify. It'll say Survivors and Thrivers, Living Your Best Life, and it'll say Justine as the host of the show. So your name will be there. And then obviously you can also figure out how to revise the cover art. So it has, could have your photo on there, Survivors and Thrivers, and it could have your name. So it's eventually just a bit of a rebrand and it shouldn't be too much. When you created the artwork, did you use a tool like Canva to create it?
No, a friend of mine actually created the artwork a long time
Okay.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you recall it? Do you know what it looks like?
Yeah, it's pink, right?
Yeah, it's a pink or like a cartoon gal.
yeah.
She's got her hair real curly. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I
Okay, yeah,
wanna
you could still use that, it's just a matter because you could take pieces of that and then do it as the rebrand, 'cause and you can even keep the same colors, the pink and everything like that. So visually, like, from a branding perspective, you could keep everything the same, and it's just I think a name, because if you say "Just Talk with Justine," it sounds like a talk show that talks about anything, right? And what you're trying to do, if you're it's really, like, I feel like it's your mission from what you've described in our brief chat when we met that, you really wanna get the word out about these people and tell their
I do.
stories. So you have to make it visible. You
Uh,
have to put your marketing hat on and saying, "How can I get more people to learn about these stories?" And survivors and thrivers seems like it's something because when I asked you for the
I
through
like that.
line
No, you're
across your
right. I use that
past
term. I
episodes,
use survivors and thrivers
that's
a
the theme,
lot.
right? That's the theme a lot. So,
I
yeah.
like that. I'm gonna figure that part out. I'm definitely gonna do that.
And so you think about you have the name survivors and thrivers, and then obviously we could look at the description as well to refine that because if you've been through a challenging point in your life and you're struggling or you've come out on the other end and you feel like you're now thriving and living your best life, this is the place where you hear stories of people who had gone through this journey. So kind of like talk about it. So when you think of how people discover podcasts, they're looking at the name, they're looking at the cover art, and then they're going to go read the description. So you have
Mhm.
to make sure all these kind of things are working together to pull people in to say yes. And then what they're going to start to do is start to look at your episodes. So
Right.
if you look at your past episodes, do you typically just name them with like the name of the guest and that's it?
Well, I put a little tagline
Yeah.
about their story. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this last one was outside of God's umbrella, the story of being roofied pretty much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I put a
Yeah.
couple of her talking points in there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it worked. She's got a lot. I already got a lot of downloads in the last couple of
Okay,
days.
good.
So
Yeah. So
yeah,
those are little things you can do. Each title, the title of a podcast episode is also like an SEO friendly field. So like as descriptive as you can make it, a lot of times people might not recognize the name, but like how survived being roofied and overcame, harrowing jail experience,
correct,
because
correct.
people are like, whoa, what is that about? Like I want to learn more.
Exactly.
So you
Yeah.
kind of like almost like tease it, like be as descriptive as possible in that title of the podcast episode to really tease. And again, what you're trying to do is pull people in to each of these
It makes
episodes.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will
And
definitely relook at that.
and then when you do the recording on if you're gonna do Riverside, you obviously gonna have better quality, audio, et
That's another
cetera.
problem.
Yeah.
I've been doing it on Zoom and I have not started doing it on the Riverside yet. Do you suggest I do it right
Yeah.
directly?
Y yeah, similar to what we're using now, Squadcast, it records both sides of the conversation. Now, when you have an episode published, are you editing everything yourself now?
The last one I did, the last two on Riverside I did. I edited it myself.
Okay,
So sorry.
that's okay.
Oh my God. I'm really the best. I'm the worst. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I will definitely, so you're suggesting I definitely interview and video through that,
Riverside. Yeah.
get out of Zoom.
Yeah, and so when you did the editing, where were you doing the editing?
Well, what I did was I uploaded it into Riverside. And then
Okay.
there's a thing where you can edit.
Okay, so they're allowing you to upload,
It was a
Zoom.
free thing. Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah, they let me upload it.
okay. And you
Yeah.
feel comfortable with the editing process?
Well, now that it's transcripted for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah, yeah.
and as I'm listening to it, I'm reading it
Yeah,
and I can hear the ums and what needs to come out and what
okay.
doesn't, how many times I coughed or how many times they coughed,
Of course,
that
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. That
I
is
mean,
helpful.
I may not have done great, but for the first time, I was super proud of myself that I actually got that far.
And
Yeah.
then when you publish the episode, what materials do you create from a marketing perspective?
Not a lot, because all I
Okay,
did really was bring it back over to Buzzsprout and they send it out to the certain platforms. So I've been wanting to do that. That was another thing. I want to upload it to YouTube because I am
mhm.
videoing them as well.
Yeah,
I need to do that, which I haven't done yet. But those are the little things I lack.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah, and those are little things you can do along the way, and so what you wanna do is, like what I always tell my students is, like, you just kinda 1% better every day, just kinda like, "What did you do this week to move the podcast forward a little bit?" And then do you have a website as well?
no, I
Okay.
don't. I don't. That I need to do too.
And there's an easy tool that I love recommending that we set up our clients with, and we set up students with, it's called Podpage.
Pod
So,
page.
yeah, I'll send you the link. I'll have a referral
Oh,
link, and I'll send it to you.
oh,
The beauty of Podpage is that it creates the website. You create the website once, and you put in your branding, and then you connect your RSS feed from Buzzsprout. And what
Oh.
happens is when you publish on Buzzsprout, it automatically creates a blog post on the website.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so it does it. So you just have to set it up once, and there's a pay that monthly fee, and then it's a website that basically runs itself because as you publish new content, it'll publish stuff on the
Oh my god, I
on the
love
podcast website.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's helpful as well. So you
Wow.
always want to think about all this starts to work together because when you have a call to action, you can tell people just go to the website, so you can say, survivorsandthrivers.com or just it could be a
Right.
simple, website. So it's always helpful if and when you decide to rebrand to look for you know, a related URL that you can just grab and own. And that way it's easy now when you're
Wow,
talking to
that
people
makes
on the
so much
phone.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because remember, people are listening and they just want to take the next step. And so obviously you can
Right.
say,
What is the next
search for
step?
survivors and thrivers. And so when
Yeah.
you think about how you want to like build this relationship, you're doing this for the purposes of having these conversations. But let's say, do you have goals for where you want this show to be if we're having this conversation 12 months from now, let's say?
I'd
What would
love
need
to
to
have
happen?
somebody help me sponsor it or,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
lovely. But right now, I just want to get
Yeah.
through the necessities. It's on my mind, of course, but that's
Sure.
not my main goal. That's
And
not
do
my,
you have relationships based on all your experiences through the past years for of companies, affiliations, associations, organizations that have
that I could
what you've
reach
worked
out
with
to.
or supported to? Yeah.
Not yet. Not as much. I do have them and do know of who I would reach out, but I have not reached out
Yeah.
to any of them
Yeah.
because I work
And
with the Cure Bowl here. I mean, I work with a lot of, and I know a lot of people in the healthcare industry because of
sure,
it.
sure. Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Yeah, it's really just a function of putting that, process and that plan in place, and may just be, there could be an opportunity to stay with your current host, or there's other hosts that allow for, like, for you to insert ads, dynamic ads as well, and I think, Buzzsprout does some of that. You may be able to add your own stuff as well. I don't know if they've talked about that, but that's something
I
to
think
think
they're
about. Yeah,
upgrading
yeah.
themselves. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So
But
it's important, but it's possible because you're having these conversations. Now you have companies that, support these types of missions and they're interested in these types of conversations and they want to support you. So, especially if you have a working relationship with them, a lot of times you can say, "Hey, would you like to sponsor my first season?" And
right,
as opposed to them just sponsoring like onesie, twosie episodes, "Hey, here's $50, here's $100." You really want to I always have this mantra for my second show, Vertical Farming Podcast, treat your sponsors like gold.
right.
So you develop these relationships and then you record a commercial. Like you say, "Hey, this episode's brought to you by this organization. I've worked with them in the past. They're really fantastic. I love the work they do for the community." So now it's you. It's called a host read ad.
Ah,
And, your sponsors hear that and they see that you sort of bend over backwards.
sure, sure.
And then what you do is you go on all your socials, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on
Right,
any of
right.
the Instagrams, just say, just partnered with this company to be a sponsor of my show. Like I really love them and
That'd
I'm
be
really proud
cool.
of them. And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
see, you can do things that marketing companies, you have to put yourself in the mind of a marketer and saying, they want visibility, and if they can go buy an ad in a newspaper or, they'll get one run of that and then
Right.
that's it, right? But now this new medium, relatively new podcasting, is interesting to them because now you can, like, personalize the ad and you can post it on different places and you can mention it, you can tag them in socials, you can tag them on LinkedIn when you post it,
Nice.
and they see that and they're like, "Wow, it's
That's a great idea.
really like working with Justine because she goes above and beyond." So,
Yeah, yeah, well, I love
yeah,
all that. That's
yeah,
awesome. That is
yeah.
really good. That is good advice. Really.
And so, like, when you think about, like, how you wanna grow it, and what are aspects for you as the podcast host where you wanna improve?
You're asking me that question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I just from what I'm saying, I have a lot of improvement. I really need a lot of it. I need help. I lack a little bit of self confidence in this genre here. If I was working at a trade show, it would be no problem.
Yeah,
But, I don't know if I have the proper voice, those kind of things. There's a lot of insecurities that I have, but I'm
yeah,
going to overcome them and just talk.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, a lot of people refer to that as imposter syndrome, right? Because they hear other people speaking, but I think the fact that you've started the show is a testament to getting like, you got past the initial hump. I mean, and most podcasters, there's something called pod fading, they don't make it past episode. I think it's 7 is the number, where people, like, just burn out. They're like, "This is too much, this is too hard." And I think if you think back to, why you've started the show, how I've been able to keep podcasting, I just like giving people a voice, you know? I really feel, and I say this all the time, everyone has a voice inside of them that needs to be heard, you know? And I think this is sort of what drives you, and I mean, you didn't know anything about podcasting, you didn't really know even much how to start one, yet you started one, you're 20 episodes in because I think what you're realizing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when you have these conversations, now you're giving your guests a voice, you know, and you're
Correct.
finding your own at the same time.
Absolutely. And, they all hesitate to get on there. And then once they start talking, they're like, "Oh my god, that was so easy," "I enjoyed it," and I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
love when they say stuff like that. So, yeah. And I said, "See, it wasn't that hard. If I could talk to you, you could talk to me. We can do this."
Did
We
you listen or did you continue to listen to podcasts for other interview shows or types of shows for inspiration?
I have
I love it.
not. I don't know why I haven't.
That's okay because I think would your friends describe you as a natural conversationalist?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know about a natural I think I wanna make people feel at ease. That's my main thing. I don't want anybody to feel nervous and talking, about because we're talking about personal stuff like their breasts are gone, and they've got tattoos on their nipples, and it's a hard thing to talk about sometimes, and my goal is to make them feel at ease
Where does that come from? Why do you wanna make people feel at ease?
because I know what it's like. I don't wanna be uncomfortable. I pretend it's me that they're,
Mm,
I just wanna be I wanna make that person feel like it's okay to tell me
mm.
because I understand it. And I know what they feel. I know how they feel.
Where
And
does this empathy muscle come from for you? Like, did you always have it as a child? Is it something that you can look back and say, "And I've always been like," or is it something that's come over time?
I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I don't believe I was always so empathetic as I may be now. I don't know. Talking to people, just you learn so much about people. People are so strong. Our bodies are amazing. And I don't know. I interviewed a gal that's a real advocate in the breast cancer field. And she's big on LinkedIn and the breast cancer and the health insurance and all of that. And, I get more power to her. She actually reached out. She had an agent or somebody that reached out and said, "Hey, she wants to be on your podcast." And I was like, "Wow." And she was super great. But I am just the opposite of that. I just want to talk to you. I'll do and if you need me to find something for you, I will find it.
Mm,
That's my goal. I always say that at the end. If you need something, write me, email me, text me, whatever you have to do, and I'll help you.
yeah,
I'm not going to talk about the insurance,
yeah.
that's not my thing. That's not
You
my,
just wanna get their stories out.
that's it. Yeah, because somebody's going to hear it and say, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. That's what the goal is.
Mhm.
And right now, more and more women are younger getting diagnosed, and, some have families, some don't. And if you don't have that support system, man, that sucks. It really does, you know?
Are there any other stories that from the ones you've heard? I'm sure they're all powerful because if they're survivors and thrivers, like, you know.
Extremely powerful stories. Yeah. What some people have been through. I mean, I had it pretty bad, but I didn't have it half as bad as some of the gals I've talked to. So, I mean, I'm still standing upright. That's all that matters at this point.
How do you hold space, Justine, for these conversations? Because, you know, most of the stuff we talk about on this show is, you know, we don't try to get too deep or, you know, occasionally something will come up and people will be describing something about their childhood and, you know, they start to get a little bit emotional. But for the most part, you know, we keep the energy pretty high. But for these conversations, they can get pretty heavy. And so, you know, you have to hold that space. And I imagine there could be some tears in some of these
There is,
conversations when
there
they're
was.
talking through this. And, you know, I don't know if other than this experience you've had with the podcast, if you've had, you know, training on how to have these tough conversations, but how do you think about or how have you grown to like learn how to build this muscle of just like
Well, I'm
holding the
trying to learn.
space?
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but see, that's one of my problems. I'm trying to be a better listener. That is a better listener and not interrupt. And I'm thinking about going to Toastmasters to learn how to talk better. I don't know. What do you
I think
think?
what's important in what I've learned over the years in terms of doing the podcast interviews, again, it's this point of being a good listener and also being comfortable with empty space. A lot of times early on, I would ask a challenging question and, you know, and I know it would require a thoughtful response. And that's why I've loved video from day one. I was using video way back in 2014. I was using something called Ecamm with call recorder with Skype kind of,
Oh,
but
yeah?
I always wanted the video because I wanted the body language.
You want the
Like, if I'm gonna
reaction.
ask you a tough question and the reaction, so what's helpful and, tools like Riverside and Squadcast and Descript can do this now, but, like, when you ask someone a question, you can see sometimes they wanna know if they're in a safe space. And so a lot of times in the beginning, it's like lighthearted questions. I just want to like set the tone and let them know, like, hey, this is a safe space. And one of the things I do in the beginning sometimes, I'm like, hey, what do you want? Is there anything we shouldn't talk about?
Right, right. I do
Or
that. I've
yeah,
asked
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. And then also let them know, hey, we're going to be doing video, right? So you're going to say, we're not recording, this is not live. We're not going to be going
Right.
live on YouTube, but it'll be out later and we'll edit it out. But feel the need to repeat a question or take your time with your answers. So all these little things help them kind of relax so that when you get to the point of asking them a challenging question,
Question.
then you gotta let it breathe. Like, ask
Yeah.
them a question and then, I
Then
give an
wait.
example. Yeah, and wait. And sometimes, like, it's challenging because you as a podcast host, you're like, "Oh, this is dead air." But again, you're
Yeah.
not on the radio, so you don't have to worry about it. You could always edit it out later. And I
Correct.
found, Justine, like, specific examples. Gary Leland comes to mind, a past guest. He talks about an experience he had when he was a kid and he was playing around in the yard of his family, and his there was a car in the parking lot and it was unlocked, and he was playing with a friend, and they went in the car and they found a gun under the seat, and he took the gun and he was playing cops and robbers, and he pointed the gun at his friend and he pressed the trigger. Thankfully, the gun was locked
Oh
and
my god.
nothing happened. But I'm listening to him tell the story, and he realizes later on, he's like, "Oh, you know what?" He's like, "I don't know if I've ever told anyone that story." And it was like an amazing moment because I was like
Uh,
biting my tongue.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
"Don't interrupt. Don't say anything. Hold the space. Just keep there." And I was just watching and I was just waiting and waiting. And you could see like he was almost processing something as he was going through the story and realizing like, wow, and that happens when you create a safe environment, which I'm sure you do for these conversations, where people feel like, "Oh, I can trust Justine with this, and she'll, have respect for the story and let it sort of come out naturally."
Did you get a lot of downloads on that episode?
I got some feedback from folks that really, like, appreciated that, and
Yeah.
again, it's helpful. So I think I always the other thing to keep in mind, so, you always wanna be curious, right? So when you're listening to people tell a story, like, you've mentioned several topics, and I'm like, "Oh, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that." So you have to, like, be
Pull it out of
coming
the
to these conversations with curiosity, you have
correct.
to want to know more about these people, and this is why you have them on. And then I always say there's 3 people in a podcast conversation. There's the host, the guest, and the listener. Singular,
Uh-huh. You gotta
singular.
think
There's one person listening at a time, even though you want, like, thousands
right.
of listeners. Remember, there's people I'm reaching for my earbuds here. There's people listening to the podcast. There's one person listening. So a lot of times when you think about conversations or they mention a topic or an acronym or an organization, like, "Hey, Justine, for the benefit of our listener, can you explain what a dragon boat is and what you do on there?" And because it's almost like you're in a restaurant or a bar, you and your guests are having a conversation, and the listeners pulled up a stool and just, like,
Wow.
sitting there watching it.
Yeah,
So
I
you
gotta
think
I
about
that's
yeah,
interesting. That is really great, great advice. Yeah, you gotta think about there's 3 people, not just you and your guest. You gotta think about who's listening.
yeah.
Oh my
And
god,
and a
that's so
lot of that is
cool.
is the inspiration you provide, and then when you start to see you open this up, then your guests, feel connected with you, and they wanna share something with you as well. So I think a lot of times there's some prep work you can do for your guest, but I think overall it's important to create the safe space, and I think as you start to do that, what I would advise you to do is also think about, like, a dream 100, like, who make a list of, like, who are the 100 people that I would just go as high as you want, you know, who are the people that have stories of surviving and thriving that I would love to have on the show? And then the other thing you can do, so that would be one recommendation, like, make that list so that you have it, put it up in front of your wall
Mhm.
as you're doing these interviews,
That's a
and
great idea.
and then remember that, like, that's your North Star, like, in order you want to get visibility, you start to, like, have these conversations, and you can be seen as the person that holds space for these conversations, and that motivates you, like, "Okay, like, I wanna who else has a story that I can serve as the conduit
I already
for?"
have a couple people in mind right now. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really important. And then really thinking about, after you're having these conversations, what type of follow-up can you create? And I'll give you some guidance when we're offline, but basically, once it's published, you'll say, let's say you had someone named Susan on the show, you'd be like, "Hey, Susan, thanks for coming on the show. Here's the materials we created. Here's a link to your show. Here's a link to YouTube. Here's some copy you can put on your socials. Here's some graphics we created. So you give them, it's this,
Wow.
I always say treat your guests like gold, like because they've given you an hour of their time.
Sure, sure,
You
sure.
don't want them fumbling around on Apple or Spotify to try to find a link to their episode
No,
so
I
they can
usually
promote it.
send them the link. I do
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and then I send a thank you note. I send a
yes,
thank you card, but
yeah,
yeah, I like
that's
your other
beautiful.
idea though. Use some of
Yeah,
this for social media. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a great idea.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I'm glad we had a chance to connect because I wanted to just learn more about what you were doing, and I got the sense from your energy that you're really, like, passionate about, everything you do, but specifically, like,
right.
why you started this podcast, and I'm glad
Yeah.
we got to connect.
Yeah, me too. You are such an inspiration and all your ideas are so great. So how can I follow up with you on some of this stuff? So I'm going to talk about myself and look up that I can change the name right on
Yeah,
Buzzsprout. And then the pod page you're going to send me because I
yeah,
definitely wanted to do a very simple
sure.
page that
Yeah,
connects me to
yeah,
my Just Talk, well, or
yeah.
Survivors and Thrivers, which whatever name I'm going to call it. Yeah.
So let's wrap up here, and then we'll have a conversation offline. So I
Okay,
usually ask a couple of
you
questions
got it.
as we wrap up a conversation here.
Thank you, Harry.
What is something you've changed your mind about recently?
Recently or just like in our conversation, I'm gonna consider my new name in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm gonna change. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about you?
Oh, the people think maybe they think I'm stuck up or something. I think they might think that,
Yeah.
you know, and really not. I'm not stuck up at all. I happen to be pretty nice. I think. I
I
have
think so
been
too.
misjudged. I have been
Yeah.
misjudged in my past. So,
Yeah.
but it's all good. It's all good.
Well, I think when people get to know you and they see the work that you do and how this has become your mission later in life, I think they can only see like how open and big your heart is
Well, I
and
hope
how
so.
you want to do good as well.
Yeah. What do you think about yourself? Do you have that? Any feeling about that? What have you changed yourself lately?
I think I've tried to be less stressful about future things that I can't control. Like sometimes I get stressed with my agency that we're not growing as fast, or I lose a client and I start to get like a little anxious about it. And so I'm slightly like neurodivergent, probably some slight ADHD, overthinking. So
Are you? Okay.
try not to be too hard on myself. And I've come back to understanding the importance of like meditation, and I'm trying to set aside 20 minutes every morning to just sit in silence
Really?
or yeah, because it's really like for someone like me that has an overactive mind, it's like it can spiral out of control pretty quickly
Yeah.
into worst case scenarios. So I'm trying to just be more gentle on myself and realize that like I don't have to have everything figured out, and wherever I want to be, I have to act as if I already have it in my life, and
What they say, like, they put it
yeah,
out there.
yeah, just had act as if I'm already experiencing I already have everything I need, and I should feel and then tie that to an emotion. So if I had everything I need and I was completely taken care of in my life, like, what would that feel like? And, my heart would be open. I'd be like, I'd probably have tears of joy and stuff like that. So if you can bring those emotions up, from a spiritual perspective, I've read enough and, learned enough
Uh-huh.
to know that, like, that's an important, like, aspect to have and try to maintain on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you're inspiring me right now, so and you have such a nice voice. You really have
Thank
that
you.
nice sound, that nice voice.
So where's the best place to have listeners and viewers connect with you?
Where's the best place?
Yeah.
By my email, but
Okay.
if that's
So
what you're
what so
referring to.
yeah, yeah. So what we'll do is and this is part of, like, the coaching, right? Because now people like, when you think about it, like, when you tell people about your podcast, you're like,
Yes.
it should be something simple, like, go to,
Just
Just
talk
Talk
with
with Justine,
Justine.
Justine.com or,
Correct, that's
whatever.
what it
Yeah.
is.
It's yeah. So for right now, you could say Just Talk with Justine,
Right.
and you could have that be what anything you're doing with the podcast and stuff like
Correct.
that. So
Just
it's
talk with
helpful
Justine.
to yeah. And then we'll put any of the socials you sent me or provided in the form. We'll make sure those are all in the show notes as well.
Okay. Awesome. So exciting. Well, I hope we can
Well,
talk again. I definitely
yeah,
wanna pick your brain and, whatever that you do, you keep me up to date so I can do it as well.
yeah, and your story is very inspirational. I appreciate you sharing it.
Oh, no, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.